Hello and welcome to the second series of Rhythm Section's Future-Proof Masterclass program. I'm really happy to introduce our guest today, Jamz Supernova. Jamz has been one of the biggest supporters of the Rhythm Section label for a really long time, as we have of her work bringing underground sounds to the masses through her radio shows and breaking now lots of superstars from across the musical spectrum. So it's an absolute joy and honour to have you here today, Jamz.
Oh, thank you for having me.
A multi-hyphenate force in the UK's music scene, Jamz is label boss of Future Bounce, radio host at BBC Six Music, BBC Radio 1 Extra, international DJ, podcaster, and overall tastemaker, broadcasting in the industry for over a decade. So thank you so much for joining us. Before we dive into things, I'll just briefly explain what Future Proof is all about for those who aren't familiar. So Rhythm Section is a South London-based record label and dance that's been releasing music and throwing parties for over a decade. Future Proof is Rhythm Section's 6-month artist development program designed to support 6 emerging DJs and producers from across England to develop their individual skills and industry know-how, ready to become future leaders in the electronic music scene. We created Future Proof so that we could share the knowledge and expertise our team and peers have accumulated over the years to demystify the industry, level the playing field, and equip aspiring artists with the skills they need to build lasting careers in the music industry. For this second year of Future Proof, we've taken the programme on tour. This evening, we're at the brilliant Soup in Manchester. Big thank you to Soup for hosting us today. But over the next, I'm trying to figure out how many months we're in. Over the next 3 months, we'll be continuing on to Leeds, Newcastle, and back to London. We've already been in Bristol, holding a masterclass and an after party in every city we visit. So big shout out to the cohort that are here today. And yeah, without further ado, I should say a big thank you to Arts Council England and Beatport's Diversity and Parity Fund, Ableton, Audio-Technica and Cradle for making this all possible. I'm Amelia. I've worked at and with Rhythm Section for over 7 years, and I'm one of the team running Future Proof alongside Emily, aka Echo Juliet, Bradley Zero, and the rest of the Rhythm Section team. So now, without further ado, we can kick things off. So how's it going, Jamz? How are you?
Yeah, good. No, really happy to be here. Looking forward to tonight. I think, Manchester's one of my favourite cities to play in and to be a part of all the things that happen in community-wise, because I think that, in the heart of it, so much of what people do is like for other people, to help other people, and I like that. Yeah.
Amazing. It would be great to start off by talking a little bit about your journey into radio. I know you were a producer on 1 Extra for 5 or 6 years before getting your own show, working with Toddler T, Target. How did you first get into producing?
So I just knew when I was about 16, 17, I was in college, and I'd always go on the BBC website to see their internships. I went to the Brit School, and they have quite a good relationship with the BBC because a lot of the first generation of Brit School students went on to form the beginning of 1 Extra. So I remember when I was younger, being able to go to the studios, and I sort of thought, this is where I need to be. And when I was at college, my teacher would always be like, you could be the next Janine, and Janine was like a high-up producer. He's like, you could be the next Janine Campadu, you've got what it takes. So it kind of had been planted in my head to be a producer, but I also knew I wanted to be a presenter, a broadcaster. So I'd be like, yeah, cool. But I knew that in my heart I really wanted to be on air. But I also didn't want to go to university, so I thought that if I started working at the BBC out of college, then that would be my university, and then I get my show. It was like part of a little master plan.
Okay, there was a plan.
Yeah, so when I turned 18, I was like, bang, all right, just turned 18, let me apply for the internship. Didn't get the first one, didn't get the second one, and then I applied one more time. I thought I'm going to try one more time. And then I got an interview, and then I got the placement. So I first went in as an intern, and then came back in production. But I think it wasn't I didn't realise until I got there how exciting production was. And I'm glad I had the tools from college of editing and sort of, basic radio skills, but then to get to use them every day. Like I do not regret having 5 years in production. I think it was the making of me.
Yeah, amazing, and so great to have someone who like believed in you early on, and I think there's also something to be said about sticking with it. And you know, even when you get knocked back, even when you get that initial rejection, it's so easy to let that kind of get into your head and think, okay, I must not have what it takes. But the reality is there's just a lot of people trying to do this, and there's not always room for everybody.
Yeah, and my application got better every time, and actually kind of that's kind of like a mantra now.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not scared of rejection in the slightest. I'm like, it'd probably take me a couple of goes. Take me a little bit of tweaking.
Such a healthy way to think. Yeah. So obviously you learn a lot about music from working as a producer, but I'd love to know what the key lessons were that you learned about broadcasting from being a producer.
Gosh, yeah, so much. I mean, I think watching people working, you know, seeing is believing, and I think being in the studio with people like Trevor Nelson and watching how he works and how he works the desk, and how it always amazed me that whenever he put the fader down, he would sound the same. So he wasn't like putting a voice on, he was just being himself, maybe just swearing less when the mics were up, or being, you know, a little less rude. But, you know, but he was still him. Or working with someone like a Target. And I remember, like, we were in the old BBC building, which was called Yalding House. And I would watch him prepare for the Homegrown show, which was a Sunday show. And he mixes everything. There's not many DJs that live mix on air at the BBC, but he's always been someone that has always mixed the whole show all the way through. And I remember he was on CDs, so that kind of shows you where we were in the timeline. So we'd burn his CDs for him, we'd give them to him, he'd come in about 6 o'clock, a show was at 7, and then he would sit there listening on the CD. I don't know why he didn't go to the studio, but maybe we only had one studio then. So he would sit there, we're putting the CDs in and tap the beats out, and then he put the next CD in, tap the beats out to work out what went together. And I just loved watching him work. He could mix anything. He would go from jungle to hip hop to, you know, R&B. He could literally mix any genre that you threw at him. And then someone like a Toddler who was just so passionate. I think he came into radio not being a broadcaster. It was because he had a great personality and he had a unique sort of take on music. But then watching, you know, him be himself and be okay with the fact that he wasn't a broadcaster in that sense, but he's endearing. So if he makes a mistake or he mispronounces something, it's fine because he's just being himself. So that was a big lesson. I think it also gave me life lessons. So I was there from, you know, 19, and I started to quickly understand that it's not all fun. You know, there's a lot of admin of any kind of job that you work in, whether it's fun, sometimes there's always admin. So I always started to see the studio as the playground. So that would be the reward for doing the jobs that weren't so fun. I'd always turn things into a game a little bit. All right, you've got to do some music reporting. So you need to report, I don't know, 100 songs over the next 3 hours, but I'd make a little game out of it, you know. What can I listen to in this time? Like, you know. But knowing that there would always be the reward, which was the studio. So even now in my sort of day-to-day, like I understand the importance of admin or doing things that I don't necessarily enjoy, because I can roll it forward and always think of the reward. And then I think patience. I think the biggest thing was the patience and professionalism of managing people, their expectations, understanding that you're there to do a job. I wanted to be on air. You know, I wanted to be the person on the other side, but it wasn't appropriate for me to express that during somebody else's show. You know, so when it's your show, I'm going to give you everything. I'm going to give you my time, my ideas, my eye contact, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And I was kind of ties into what I was going to ask you next, which is... So you mentioned about how a big part of your job was putting ideas forward for the shows you worked on, which is obviously part of the job, and I imagine it can be difficult when it feels like, you know, your ideas are sort of going towards furthering someone else's career, and I think that's something, you know, there's a tension there that people can really struggle with. So do you have anything to say for someone who might be facing that situation?
Yeah, I think to think of it as like furthering someone else's career would be an unhelpful way to see things, because essentially it's a job, right, and you're working. So I never really saw it like that, and I was so excited to make the best radio. I think actually it's like you flip it. Is it putting someone else's career forward? Are you working together, you're a team, to make the best radio? And even now with people that I work with, like, okay, yes, it says Jamz Supernova, but there's 3 people that work on the team. It's me, producer and assistant producer. So all these ideas, all this brainstorming, from the moment it comes from an idea to it being like the inception of it on air, it's a collaborative effort. So I think it's really important to see it as being part of a team. And I actually was always like quite giving. I think ideas are endless. Like there's always so many ideas, and I would sort of think about the person that I was working with and maybe brainstorm for them and come up with things in mind. I wouldn't necessarily give them something that I wanted to do myself, you know, or I tweak it. Or maybe I'd give them something I do want to do myself, but I'm seeing it as slightly as a social experiment. Yeah. You know, does this work?
I want to let you test it out.
Yeah, you test it out. But I think there's nothing more exciting than coming up with an idea in the morning and it being on air by the afternoon. That's cool, you know, and you can't do that in TV. There's not many industries that you can do that in, but radio, you can wake up with something in the morning. If you're on air that afternoon, you can try it.
Yeah.
It might not work.
And you said something to me.
But it might.
Yeah, you said something to me when we spoke before about that ideas are endless, which I really loved, that sentiment. So I guess like not getting too hung up on, you know, this one idea being like the be all and end all of your career. And
you have to ask yourself as well, like, is this an idea that I'm realistically, is this an idea that I'm going to do? Do I have the capacity to do it, you know? And you kind of shift them into different categories. I might not do that now, I'll save that for later. This one's a free idea, I can give this one away, you know?
Yeah. And it's probably considered to be quite a natural path from being a producer to being on air. But you've said that it's harder than it seems. So why do you think that is?
I mean, I think when I first started working in radio, it was a big thing. There was a big divide. You had talent, and they were on air, and then you had production, and it was very much like there wasn't that much of a crossover, and not many people had done it. Only Annie and Zayn had done it, and Nick Bright at that time.
They were producers as well before?
Yeah, they'd come from production, yeah. And then it was like, but that would never happen again. It's like, ever. Which is, you know, that's definitely not true. And I can name, you know, other DJs that have come from production, especially now, and everything fluctuates. Maybe that didn't work then. Yeah. You know, maybe then. Also, I think then there wasn't the internet. Wasn't how it was. There wasn't as much, you know, autonomy to be able to either do your own show or create your own name. So you were relying on the corporation or the company to put you on a platform. Whereas now you can make your own platform. Yeah,
100%. My first job in music was a producer. I was a producer at NTS, and that's actually how I ended up started working for Rhythm Session, because I was producing Bradley's show. I just sort of remembered that connection to what we're talking about. But it's nice to remember that there kind of doesn't need to be that separation between the people behind the scenes and the artists. Like anyone can, you know, be both of those things.
Definitely, and I think it kind of went back to what I was saying. It's kind of understanding when you are in that role that you are there to do the job of being a producer, and you will get your time to be on the other side of the mic as well. And I think that's partly why I had so much support from people that were presenters and broadcasters. I think because I gave a lot during their shows or when I was working with them. So then after the show or Target would be like, oh, do you want to DJ for me next week? Or Toddler would be like, hey, how about, you know, do you want to do this for me? Like, I don't know, like, or Trevor would be like, okay, should we go for dinner? Tell me everything. What do you want to do? What is it? Even, you know, someone like Jim McKerney would be like, right, let's go for a coffee after the show then. Tell me, what is it? What do you want? How are you going to do it? All right, let's go, you know?
Amazing.
And so, but I think if I hadn't have given in that time and shown that I was kind of willing, I wouldn't have had their time. I think, I think sometimes we forget it's quite a transactional industry. You do for me, I do for you. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. And even now, so I'll work with people that I know want to be, you know, broadcasters and want to be on air. But if we find a spark or we connect creatively, thank you for that idea. I love that idea. What would you like for me? Okay, I'd like a little session, a mentor session. Okay, let's do that. Or can I get an intro to so and so? Yeah, let's do that.
I know so much of I found that like a big part of being a producer obviously was different at NTS in the second year of NTS compared to, you know, being at the BBC, but you know, a part of it was kind of making people feel comfortable, making sure the hosts, you know, felt at ease because there was a lot of new people coming through, and you know, that meant like being a friendly face, and people, you know, were really appreciative of that, and they were quite forthcoming when it came to, you know, how can I help you out? And they see someone who's quite like green and they're like, oh, I've been there, you know, what can I do? So, and when was it so you were at Reprezent? Where is that in the timeline?
Pretty much exactly the same time I started my internship at BBC was the same time I got the show on Reprezent. So it was great because it was like I could learn all these things in the daytime.
Like funnel it into your show.
And then go to Reprezent Radio and test it out, you know. And at first I was just copying. I was just copying. I was copying Mr. Jam. I was stealing his music because I had access to all the tunes. Because remember, you couldn't get those songs that easily. So I'd like burn these. We had these red BBC CDs. So I'd burn them. Like they're like, "What are you doing? Nothing. I'm just about to leave. I'm leaving now. Don't worry."
I feel like that's the right of a producer, really.
I cleaned it. Like I'm taking the tune. I'm joking. No, but I'm the same now. My producers are like, "You don't even ask. The folder's yours. Take it. Like we're good." But then I go to Reprezent, and I did a show. It was like around the evening, and I was trying to be like Mr. Jam. I wanted to be like this kind of specialist, all-seeing person. But in doing so, it kind of like led me to start finding out what did I like. Because when I first started at BBC, I would have been any kind of presenter. I was like daytime, glitzy, I'd been going to all the MTV auditions, and I loved music, but I didn't know what my thing was, apart from the general sort of mainstream or what was popular or what every young person was listening to. So I found my sound through working on other people's show and the collision of the internet, of SoundCloud at the same time.
SoundCloud, yes. I was going to say, my next question was going to be, how do you think being a producer shaped the kind of broadcaster and DJ you've become? You've kind of just answered that a little bit, but obviously working at the BBC, working across so many specialist shows, and how that's kind of led you to sort of hone your own direction a little bit more and become a specialist yourself. Do you think that's how much of an influence do you think that kind of had on the type of DJ and producer you are today?
Yeah, I think it just opened my ears, because even if I was working on a show that musically it wasn't my favourite genre, like the rock show, but I could appreciate stuff, or doing the chart show, I could appreciate the music. Or I remember working on the drum and bass show, and then I did that for 3 months, and I'd come away and I was like, I knew all the labels, what was on Hospital, what was on V recorded, I was like, I'm in this world, the dancehall shows, I was like a sponge, and even if I knew, okay, but is it the music that I want to play? Maybe not, but it just kind of kept nudging me. And then I think by the time I started going on SoundCloud, because I've been like big in the blogs, I loved blogs, blog culture, and then SoundCloud came along, and it was, what I loved about it took so many, all of those songs, all of those genres that we've mentioned, but it kind of mashed them up together. And then the edit culture was so big as well. So you could be like, I like R&B, but I've just found this like wicked Cassie edit where it's got R&B on one side and then it's got like house music on the other side. So fusing it together, or it's like got kind of like a footwork, but then there's a edit of, I don't know, Beyonce over the top. I don't know. That was like kind of my initial like world into electronic music.
Yeah, amazing. Well, so obviously as a broadcaster, I'm sure lots of people would love to know about how you go from having a show on NTS or Bellamy or Reprezent or Reform or Crop here in Manchester to taking that next step to a platform like Six Music. Do you think there's any kind of rules there about, like, not rules, but any kind of advice that you could share about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing I'd always say is listen back to your shows. I still listen back. When I go home tomorrow, I'll be listening back to yesterday's show. I listen back to every show. And preferably I'd like to come off air and listen back and then enter the world again. Like it's like a ritual that I have to, but it's important. And I remember being on Reprezent, and I had a mentor called Gavin. He's amazing. He used to be on One Extra. And he's mentored a lot of the cohort of Reprezent DJs that went on to go on to BBC. But he would be like, after the show, he pulled me over, he's like, right, sit down. And he's like, listen back. And I was like, oh, I sound so, I don't want to hear it. He's like, well, get used to it. It's your voice. Yeah. Like, he's like, your voice isn't going to change.
You want other people to listen to it.
Right, exactly. So he'd make me do that after every show, and then he'd write notes. So I kind of kept that practice. And then it gives you confidence, because you can hear yourself, getting better. You hear how you change. You hear what works, what doesn't work. Are you concentrating in that link? No, you probably wasn't, because you have mispronounced something completely, wrong. So I think listening back is key. And then what I would do is also, I started making, demos. So every couple of months I'd take the best intro, the best music link, the best maybe, I don't know, station message, what's coming up on Reprezent later that day, the best snippet of a feature, and maybe the best goodbye. And then I would constantly swap them out as you're getting better, you swap them out. And I had a good mentor at the BBC called Rob Littlejohn, who was the first person to tell me that I wasn't good enough to be on the BBC, which was the best thing that I heard at 21. And he was like, but let me help you get better. So every 6 months I'd send him a demo from the Reprezent shows. We did that for 2 years. And every time he'd give me a little bit of feedback that, that was great, how about you need to work on that part. And then after 2 years of doing that, he's like, I can really hear how better you've got. And it's like, if he can hear it, but then other people would have been able to hear it as well. So I think having that for yourself, for one, but then also being able to send it, there's ways of getting, you can get emails of people that, there's people that have great production companies in Manchester that are doing like, I don't know, Afro Deutscher's show or Tom and Deb, there's good links in Manchester to get into the BBC. But I think updating them, and it's like, even if you don't hear back from the first demo that you sent, send another one in 6 months, send another one in a year, send another one in, keep on sending them because you're going to keep on getting better. But then I also think what's changed now, maybe a little bit, but also we're kind of going back, like everything's cyclical. So at one point it was like, but who are you? I remember that was one of the knockbacks that I got, because I got like 5 years of knockbacks. So the first one was, you're not good enough. Fair. Cool. Second one was like, you're still not good enough. Okay, fair. Third one is like, you're getting good, but nobody knows who you are.
Okay.
Fair. Now you're getting good. People are starting to know who you are, but you just doesn't have the right slot for you. And then the fifth one, I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really done. I was actually having too much fun on Reprezent.
Okay.
I wasn't done.
Yeah.
I was actually living. I was doing it. I was doing all the things. So my mind wasn't even like focused on whether they wanted me or not, because I was doing the radio show that I wanted to do. I was DJing. I was kind of like, they say like when you're looking over there, that's when it happens. But I think building your own community or brand, I know the brand word is like so frustrating, but is it visible on your Instagram what you represent or what you stand for? Or if it's not Instagram, is it Substack? Do you have an audience that you can talk to? Are you integrated with the music community that you're playing? Like I used to do mixes or post a track list and tag everybody. So then other producers will be like, oh, I'd like to send you music. So I think making yourself part of the community that you want to be, or building your own one, would be really helpful. I'm trying to think what else, yeah.
So you mentioned that like...
Sorry, I went on a...
Well, I was... No, it's all good. I was going to ask you what it felt like when you started getting your first shows on One Extra, that you kind of been wanting for so long, that time on air. It sounds like maybe your mind was elsewhere at that moment, but I imagine it was still quite a special thing.
Yeah. No, it was. Of course it was.
Yeah,
and it was like... it was like, was the word like vindicating? Like, ha-ha, I did it. Everyone said I wouldn't.
Haters, yeah. Everyone who doubted me.
Yeah, but I was like, wow, I actually did it. Fuck. Okay, whoa, what now? Spent my whole...
Yeah, what next?
Yeah, not even what next, but what now? I spent my whole, later half of my teens and early 20s trying to get here, and then you get here and then you're like, I didn't think past this. I think that's an important one. But I do think that the direction of travel from community stations to national radio is one that is viable and it's doable. And I think focusing on what you're doing in the moment will get you there easier than you just kind of being like, I want a show on the BBC. Okay, but do you have a show now? Somewhere. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you're doing it from your bedroom. One great story I will tell you, because even now it can be hard to get on NTS, or Balami, because the demand is high, and that's great, right? It's good to have so many different places to be able to broadcast. But what if you're even before that? And there's a girl called Alex Holcomb who's on BBC Radio 1, and she does a kind of rock show, and she started a show on Mixcloud. And that's how she built her audience, by doing a Mixcloud show. She'd do it from her bedroom, she'd edit it together, and she dropped it weekly, consistently. Wow. And then she emailed the BBC and the head of Radio 1 and was like, you don't have a show like this. And he was like, no, we don't. Right. Here's your show. But she built it, over a good couple of years.
So she went straight from that Mixcloud show?
Yeah, she did a bit of Kerrang in between, but it was the Mixcloud that did it.
Yeah. Amazing. And then continuing a bit further into your journey becoming the broadcaster and tastemaker that you are today, I know now that your direction has somewhat kind of broadened to encompass all kinds of global sounds, but when you started out, I know you were very much in the world of R&B. Could you tell us a bit about those early days? I know you've mentioned the Future R&B doc that that you made?
Yeah, so when I started going on SoundCloud, I started thinking like, what do I want to express? How do I want to express myself? So finding sort of, the alternative R&B space, and that also came out of the blog scene as well, was really like empowering, because also that wasn't being played on any BBC station.
Yeah, and I mean, it ties back to what you were saying about
Alex.
Yeah, when she was like, you don't have a show like this.
Yeah.
And it kind of sounds like, it's the same with the future R&B stuff.
Yeah, it definitely was. And they had actually gotten rid of their R&B show, which was kind of blasphemous. It's like, well, at the core of a black station show, R&B is pretty high up on the list. But they had got rid of it, so it was kind of, but then this world was happening, and these people weren't just, they were doing numbers, and they were selling out shows, and they were getting audiences. So it wasn't this minuscule scene over here. Like, it was a global thing that was happening, and they just kind of needed someone to show them. And I did a shout out to Martha, who's on NTS and on Radio 1, who came from production because she used to do Annie Nightingale. So Martha, we made a documentary called The Story of Future R&B. And we basically spoke to all the selection guys. We spoke to lots of different people from around the world. We had A. Marie come on, and we showed her a remix of her song. And she was like, oh my God, this is happening. Like, it's crazy. So we kind of made it full circle.
Can you still watch that anywhere?
No, it was audio. Yeah, it might be on SoundCloud somewhere.
Or listen to it anywhere.
Yeah, probably on SoundCloud somewhere. But then when it aired, they couldn't believe the reaction to it, and the numbers to it, and the listeners for it. They just didn't. That was kind of like a good marker for them that something was happening. So I started off kind of as alternative R&B, but I'm still learning as well about taste. So 25, I'm into this sound, I'm into this scene, very sort of internet driven. But then I'm always a very curious person, and I'm always really open to listening from the working behind the scenes of where things are not necessarily trying to follow trends. But just being open to the way that music moves. So I remember then the show started widening organically because I was growing in taste. Where I was looking for music was changing. And I remember instances like Hack Baker. So they'd be like, Jamz, we listened to your show. This is a guy called Hack. He's kind of making futuristic folk. That's what they called it at the time. But we don't know where to play it. We don't think Radio 1 will go for it. But he's black, and it's annoying that we can't start it at One Extra. Do you want to start it? And I listened to it, I liked it. I was like, yeah, let's do it. So we played it. And that was like a big moment for both of us. For him, it felt affirming for him to be played on One Extra, but outside of being an MC or a rapper, with him and his guitar. And for me, it was like, yeah, well, I can do this more because we should be doing this. And I felt like I was on a mission, like, to expand, like, what does black music mean? If it's just R&B and hip hop, then that's not a representation. So then my friend was like, yo, Jamz, have you heard about Ezra Collective? And I was like, no, tell me about them. They're like, well, they're this group, like, they're from like North London. There's like a big jazz scene happening. Like, I think you'd really like it because you've already been playing remixes of stuff. So I think you'd like this. I was like, yeah, cool. So I think it was the Pablo sort of Prophet, the first album, had that one, and then played it, and then that was a big thing. And then that kind of opened me again. So like all these doors started opening just from being open to play stuff, and I think it was curiosity and following that. And that's kind of what I've always done.
Not being afraid to take some bolder choices.
Be bold, yeah.
Follow your nose with things.
Yeah, and then I did a show for the British Council for 2 years, or maybe a bit longer, from 2019. I don't remember. But it was kind of lockdown as well, so it's a bit of a weird time. But that was all music, every British music you can imagine. It was my job to create a show out of that. Okay, so there's another chance for me to unlock something new in my palette and in my ears. Like, can I find the best punk song?
Yeah, and obviously, like, the more you know about something, the kind of more interesting it can become, and you start to kind of dig into these new scenes and see all these things that you kind of haven't tapped into before. And I imagine that's like quite inspiring. Yeah,
and I think, like I said, I didn't go to university, and I'm not really come from an academic background, but maybe in my way of making radio, it has been my way of like doing a thesis, but in real time, or doing a master's, but in real time. So, doing the British Council stuff. So then when I got asked to do shows on Six Music daytime, I know these bands because I've already been, I was actually playing them 2 years ago, on the British Council show, and then now they're like English teacher, for example, would be a good example of that. So I've always felt like galvanized by like a new sound. I'm not going to play something but I'm also I'm a snob. I'm not going to play nothing that I don't like. And I think people were quite shocked when I got my show on One Extra how hard it would be to get music on my show. And probably even now I think people don't bother, but it doesn't mean that I'm not listening.
Yeah.
I'm just not as open to playing something, even if I might like it, but I still need the whys of why I'm playing it.
I mean, yeah, I know that, well, I can imagine that when you're working for and with bigger institutions that, which perhaps have certain ways of doing things and been doing things like that for a long time, there might be some pressure to become a particular type of artist or broadcaster. How much did you feel that, and how did you kind of manage to stay true to your authentic self?
Yeah, I think maybe success a little later. And when I say later, I think it was, maybe now it doesn't feel like it was later, but in my timeline, my plan, my master plan, it was later than I had expected.
When you're in your early 20s, you're like, why isn't my life happening now?
So, I by the time I got the show, I was very much like, okay, I know what I want to express, and I knew who I was, I think. I did, yeah. So I did know who I was and what I wanted to play, and I knew what the mission was. So first the mission was alternative R&B, we're going to expand that. Then the mission was, okay, well, we're just going to do everything like widen the black music. So I was always on a mission, so it didn't matter what somebody said I should play or should be playing, it wasn't part of the mission. When I got on Six Music.
Clear mission.
Yeah, I had a clear mission. When I was on Six Music, it was to kind of shape black music within the alternative conversation and reframe it. And then, now it's just kind of, I don't know, we're pretty wide open now. The mission is to... The
mission's been accomplished.
The mission's been, yeah, actually. So then now the mission is for me to really understand, going back and forward. I never looked back. I never cared of what had happened in the 70s or the 60s or the 50s. And actually through being interested in music around the world, it's actually quite easy to start going back to kind of understand how a genre, I don't know, example, ballet funk, to go back to Black Rio. That's an interesting journey to go back to the 70s and understand that out of resistance and prideness in being black is how we know ballet funk to be now. It's like that, so that's my mission now, is to really understand the past, to understand the future.
Yeah, get under the skin of things.
Yeah, but one thing I would say, is I read John Peel's book, and he got told what to play. Everyone's it doesn't matter what station you're on, who your boss is, you have to work out what agenda is it first. Whose agenda is it? Is it your agenda? Is it their agenda? Are they getting it from up high? Is it the station agenda? Is it about numbers? It's very easy to take it personal and to be like, they're trying to change me, So I think understanding that and removing the personal from it. And then reading his book, he is known as one of the greatest tastemakers of the British generation. Everybody above the age of maybe 45 will have a John Peel story when they were in their bedroom and then John Peel played this song and it changed their life, And he got told what to play. So he said that when he first got one of the evening shows, they came over to him and they were like, yeah, John, it's just too hard. You're not playing the right stuff. We don't want that. You need to do this for the first half hour. And he was like, yeah. I will, don't worry about it. I will. Didn't change anything. Then the next week, the head of the station comes over, he's like, thanks, John, for listening. I really appreciate it. Can really hear the difference. He didn't change anything.
Wow.
Yeah. So some people just want to be made to feel like they listen. So that's what I did. They'd be like, Jamz, I think maybe what you could do for the first, half hour of the show is, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you don't, Yeah. Obviously, because if you believe so much in what you're doing and you believe so much in what you're playing, and you're not, you know it's going to work because you believe it, right? Otherwise, why would you be doing it? So I think having those success markers of knowing my taste, knowing that when I'm the most boldest, or knowing that when I'm, I really believe in something that it connects with an audience and it helps further an artist, that's my integrity. So I think that's really important to me, and I don't think even now I couldn't do a show where I was told what to play. I think I'd rather do a show in my bedroom.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be that resistance to new sounds, to the unknown, and it's just, I guess, like being able to hold your ground, having the nerve to do that, and yeah,
and it's like, what would you risk it for? Would you risk it? And I think I was so passionate that I would risk it all to play what I needed to play.
Amazing. We've talked a bit about the trials of starting out in this industry, and how there are always hard lessons to learn. I wonder if you have any advice for people making their first forays into the music industry, things maybe you wish you knew when you were taking your first steps, maybe the practical things or personal things, like things that you've had to overcome.
I think the first thing would be the patient side of things. I wish I had been a bit more, not as wanting it so bad that I was ignoring what was in front of me. And I think there was a good couple of years maybe at the beginning in that production journey where I kind of, maybe outside I was getting really frustrated and, angry when somebody else got a show, just like things that I don't think are very helpful for your personal mental well-being to be like that. So I think I had to have like a stern word with myself to be like, and that's take yourself out of it. And it wasn't that I was going to change what the goal was, but I was going to work on the now rather than being so focused on when it would happen. So I think letting go a little bit and enjoying the journey. I wish I'd have done that a little bit more in that first, because there's some great times. It was wicked. I can look back now. It was wicked. It was sick. I had such fun at that age to work in that environment. It's a very privileged place to be. Contracts. Yes. Definitely. Yeah. Been in a few contracts. I think when I signed a first management thing when I was about sort of early 20s without really, I didn't really read it. I did read it. I had a lawyer, but they weren't my lawyer, so it was kind of not really understanding. And also I felt rushed. They kept saying, well, you need to sign it now. It's like, well, actually, I didn't need to sign it right then. And also, you can't send you can, but if you're going to send someone a 3-year contract, then it's not going to take 3 weeks to sign the contract, You kind of feel like the pressure, if you don't sign this contract, then the opportunity is gone. If they really want you, then they'll wait. And you need to take your time to go through that contract. Ask the questions, speak to other people that they've worked with, get a general feel for whoever this person or company has served you with a contract. Take your time with it. And then I think understanding that you can ask questions if you don't understand things in the contract, like if there's a line or if there's a saying. I didn't really understand this idea. We spoke about ideas before, but I didn't understand intellectual property. And I remember someone, there's a really great guy who used to work at BBC called Uche, who now works with Georgia Smith's team, and he'd be like, Jamz, it's all about the IP. And I was like, what are you talking about, Uche? I'm just trying to live. I wish I listened. Because essentially, if you work anywhere you work, that's like a creative company or a corporation, once you give an idea to them, and that idea is then, made public, they own the idea, they own the IP. So whilst I don't regret anything, I think had I have known that, maybe I would have put some of the things in place that I mentioned before. Is this the idea that I want to do myself? Or do I think that they're the best place to do it? Am I okay with, if I leave the idea there? Am I okay with that? Or, if I want to be able to do this idea for the rest of my life, maybe I shouldn't take it in there. So I think that was a really good sort of lesson, a hard lesson to learn, because I really loved that idea, which was the DIY generation, which I used to do on a Saturday afternoon. I loved it. It was basically I wanted to have my own GCSE bite size, but for the creative. So you could go on the website, on the BBC website, and you could be like, I want to be a hairdresser and have my own salon. And then you could listen to somebody that has set up their own thing. Or I want to be I want to start surfboards. Whatever you wanted to do, you could click on something and you could find someone that's done it, a young person.
A bit like this.
Yeah, like this, yeah. But then it was it wasn't done. It wasn't. We had Stephen Bartlett on. Diary of a CEO. Sounds a lot like DIY generation. No, I'm joking. No, don't sue me. It's fine. Ideas are endless. No, I'm joking. But they didn't want to continue it. I wanted it to go to the podcast space. The podcasts were just happening, and they didn't see it in that way. And the fact that they didn't want to continue it meant that I couldn't continue it under that name. So I had to get permission to change the name, tweak the format, and do it myself. So yeah, I think reading contracts, understanding intellectual property is really important. And then understanding I think the flow, we expect that our careers are that we hope It's like that. It's not. You think it's just like constantly like on a trajectory, like you're going to constantly like just win, and then you win more, and then you just keep on winning. The winning never ends, and that's just not. It's not actually feasible, and it's not also like it's not realistic for longevity.
Realistic, yeah.
You know, and I think I remember the first pitfall. I say pitfall again. I can look back in hindsight and be like, girl, you tripping? But I remember the first, I had like a big 2018. I was played Sonar, I was traveling, I was DJing, like a lot. Like I had all these gigs and the bam. And then 2019 was like, and like no gigs. And I was like, what? Like I didn't understand. I just like, I've played it like how? It's meant to be bigger. It's meant to be better. I'd always count how many festivals I had.
And you see other people.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I remember, luckily I spoke to Toddler, and he was like, he's like, oh, that happened to me. He was like, yeah, that was me 2 years ago. He was like, because you can't play every festival, and especially when you're in the middle. Like, you know, obviously if you're a headliner, and actually if you're starting out, it's easier to play more, because you're the headliner, you're commanding bigger numbers.
So you don't have to do as many gigs.
Yeah, and if you're starting out, then it's just economically cheaper, you know, and then you're in the middle and you're kind of fighting for these like middle spots. But he was like, but one you've played, he's like, it's hard in the middle, but do you want to compromise what you do to be a headliner in that way on a mainstream way? It's like, well, no. It's like, okay, so get comfortable in the middle then. It's like, cool. And then he was like, but you know, he's like, you can't play every festival every year. He's like, sometimes you just got to sit on the bench. And I was like, and he was like, but it's what you do in the quiet. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, it's what you do in the quiet. So what are you going to do with this time? Or what are you going to do whilst it feels like nobody's watching? What creative thing are you going to pursue? What are you going to try out? You know, you've got room to do it, so do it. And then lockdown happened, which was great. Because then it paused everything. And it wasn't great in some ways, but it was great in a creative way to be able to pivot and to really try to check in with myself about the kind of DJ that I wanted to be next. And I can kind of feel it like this year. Out of lockdown, I had some wicked gigs, and then this year's a little quieter. But I'm a more seasoned person to know now that's cool. So what am I going to do in the quiet? I'm going to start learning to play on vinyl. I'm going to start thinking about how I make edits for my set. And then I was like, and I'm going to think about every set that I've got. Okay, so it might not be as much as last year, but they're really cool sets and they're at really great times. So is it quality or is it quantity? Okay, and how can I make these the best sets? Because I've got a bit of time to actually think about them and how to play them. And so it's like, yeah, I think it's okay to have the quiet moments.
Yeah,
you need it even for your own.
That's a great expression.
You know, energy.
Yeah, sounds like you've had a lot of good mentors.
Yes, and that's another thing. And a mentor doesn't have to be like. Sometimes it will be the person that you ask to be your mentor. Sometimes it could be a mentor from afar, just by them doing their thing. And sometimes I think it's just the relationships that you build over time. And maybe I think it's important to like wear your heart on your sleeve and to be honest and say, yeah, like, I don't understand how this happened. Well, I don't know how this happened. I don't understand how this happened. I don't understand how this works. Yeah. How did it work for you? You know, that's my main thing. Is like, how did it work for you? What did you do when this happened? Yeah. Has this ever happened to you? And I think I'm quite open about sharing the journey, because I didn't have that, you know, when I was sitting in my bedroom. But once I got out into the world, there is that, and people so willing to share and give. Yeah.
Amazing. You've talked about having to really build your profile as a DJ separately to your radio work, and you know that there's an expectation that once you get a radio show, you'll get DJ gigs and it'll just flow in that way. But it's not always that simple. So how have you kind of, you know, achieved that? How have you kind of worked towards building your DJ profile alongside radio? Yeah,
I think I was definitely shocked because I think that was the thing. You thought you get on there and then you get, you know, they put your name in the bracket. They'd be like, you know, the name, your DJ name, and then there'd be like one extra next to it. But actually kind of, I don't know what, it just didn't work. Like maybe, I mean, I was playing R&B, so that might have stopped things. And before that I had been playing a bit wider, and then I kind of went down a specialist route. But I think, yeah, it was weird. It felt like a switch. It felt like I got the show on one extra. I was like, yeah, bam. And then the gigs just went, and there was no gigs. And I was like, okay, maybe one extra's like not that cool anymore. I don't know. Like, it might not be in a clubbing sense. And I think there is kind of, being a broadcaster, I think, and a DJ, people kind of put you in a box a little bit. They're like, well, are you a DJ or a broadcaster? Or what crowd are they going to bring? Or what are they going to play? You know, you kind of get a lot more questions. Are they a DJ, especially when you think about where you want to play. I'm sure if I was playing if I was happy to do corporate events, it'd be a different story. Being on the BBC would be a great thing because you're more of a public-facing thing. But I'm trying to be an underground club DJ, who happens to be on a corporate national station. So finding the middle ground. But for me, the middle ground was to be like, I'm going to start my own nights. So if I'm not getting booked, then I'll book myself. And that was just a complete game changer, I think, because what I was doing, I was like, booking my dream lineups with me in the middle. Yeah. So I book all my favorite headliners, and then on the flyer, people see my name next to their name, and then it makes people, all the people that I booked myself with, I went on to play with for other people in other places around the world. And I think it would have been from, sparking the seed by doing it myself and those nights being relatively successful. I think that was really key. And then also for me, separating myself as on being okay with the fact that I didn't want to play what I played on radio in the clubs. I didn't want to play that. So I'm going to have to kind of think about how I brand the DJ and stuff. So I did like club Jamz mixes, which was basically like, what does jam sound like in the club or his.
And where did you share those?
Just on SoundCloud.
Okay,
Mixcloud, and I would do them once a month and I'd make artwork for them.
You still do them once a month?
No, not anymore, no. No, and then it's always a push and pull, I would say, with radio and the DJing. I think it's always a push and pull. Like the club jams things was great. Again, putting you back in a community, people knowing that okay, you're on the radio and you're playing this, but you're also supporting them over here. So I made quite a distinct difference.
And putting yourself back in the driving seat of like, okay, right, the gig offers, they might not be there, but how can I still show the world what I want to do?
Yeah, and I love DJing. I think I would DJ in my room if I wasn't DJing in front of people. Like, I love to play. I don't always see the DJing as the main thing that I do, but it's what I want to do. I've chosen to DJ. I want to DJ. I might not be the best DJ, but I want to do it. I think radio, radio feels like that's what I'm meant to do. I walked into a radio station, I saw it, I said, this is me at 16, and I knew that was my thing, but the DJing is not it's not like natural to me. Okay. So I think that, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't try if I want to, And then the other things, like I think when I started doing, which was a good thing, but when I got my show on 6, they wanted a mix segment, the weekend warm-up mix. So I was like, oh, can we do guest mix? So they were like, no. So I was like, so you want me to mix on air every week? And they were like, yeah. I was like, fuck. I never mixed live on the radio. I've been making mixes. I hadn't been doing it live, but I just was like, well, I don't know, I'll do it.
I guess I gotta get good at this.
Yeah. And I was like, my knees always knocking, I'm always sweating. And even still now, I mean, but then 4 years on, like, if someone's like, do you do guest mix in your show? I'm like, no, I don't. Like, now I know that 27 minutes is like, that's my time to like flex and try stuff and practice. And like, I would get in at 11 o'clock on my shows on at 1. I get in at 11 and I prep the mix and I, make sure it works, put my little pointers in place, put my little things. And I always try and be in at 11, so I have a little bit of time to get that mix locked. And then by the time it gets to the 1:30, I've forgotten what I've done. So it's fine, but you have to just be free. And someone came up to me, I remember, like, I'd always like apologize on air about the mixing. Oh, sorry, that one ran away, And then some guy came up to me, is like, at a festival, he was like, Jamz, you always make out like you're a really bad DJ, but we really love that part of your show, and you're actually pretty good. I was like, see, he's like, so stop downplaying it. I was like, okay, thank you. So nice. And then I listened back as well, and it's like some weeks, was a bit loose. Some weeks are great.
But a lot of the time it's like, if you don't point that out, no one is really noticing.
Of course, and that's sometimes, exactly, and it's fine. People want to know you're mixing live. It's exciting.
And if you, do it with confidence.
Yeah, and remember, it's not like on an NTS where mixing live is the kind of, for some shows it's the default, isn't it? It's a different station. So for them to hear mixing live on a Saturday afternoon in their kitchen, I think they couldn't care less if I clanged. They're just happy. That is the energy of it. They like it.
I think we have to wrap things up. Thank you so much, Jamz.
Thank you.
So nice
Sorry, I speak for so long. I was like, get really passionate.
Yeah, I have no concept of what the time was, so I'm glad I had Emily there flashing me.
Thank you.